So this is just going to be a video, sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a video response or whether you want to call it just giving more information about a Twitter post that was put out a while ago. It was by someone known as Amir Attaran, who is a professor of law and medicine at the University of Ottawa. So he ended up putting out a post on Twitter where he was talking about I guess you could call it voter demographics when it comes to liberals and conservatives, but he was talking about education. So the one thing that he pointed to is he says that people who are more educated vote liberal over voting conservative, but I think he made a fatal flaw in what he was talking about. So I'm just going to quickly read through the tweets that he ended up putting out, and we'll kind of revisit them and sort of go over what he's talking about. So he put out 3 sets of tweets, and the first one says, he quotes it from abacusdata.com, so Abacus polling, and it says, quote, "Conservatives have a strong lead amongst those who have not attended college or university, while the liberals have a lead among those with university educations." End quote. The party of the uneducated. Every poll says this. And he goes on to say, update, hundreds of conservative trolls are irked by my tweet. They seem to not notice the long quotation from a pollster whose data show that cons are comparatively less educated. If you don't like the data, shooting the messenger doesn't change anything. And another update, he says, many conservatives are viciously angry with me for showing polling data, but they can't or won't disprove the data showing that the least educated vote conservative. Why? It takes strength to face uncomfortable facts. Not doing so is a type of cowardice too. So these are the ones that he ended up putting out. And first things first, I'm not going to refute what he's talking about because I've been hearing about this for a long time, and it seems to be the truth that more people that attend college and university post-secondary education tend to vote liberal. But what I am going to go against is that there is a big difference between education and intelligence. First of all, this sort of idea would have been much more effective decades ago, because a long time ago, universities and colleges, they were actually places where the smartest of our society could go. There was not a reason back in the day, we're talking maybe in the 50s, 40s, maybe around that time, for some people to go to university. These were meant for high-profile jobs that required a university or college degree, and these are people who had to get in based on merit, based on intelligence. So, but there were jobs out there for those who couldn't actually do that, the working class. There were jobs out there, so they could finish their high school, go out and start their work, and they didn't have to go in to become a lawyer, let's say, like this gentleman here. So that would have had more impact decades ago, because then you could actually say, well, the smartest people end up voting liberal. That's not so true anymore, because these days, first of all, they've lowered the requirements to get into college and university so much that it's not even just going to university or going to college. It doesn't actually show that you are an intelligent person. If anything, these days, it shows that you're either willing to take on massive amounts of student loan debt, or you're either taking on massive amounts of student loan debt, or you're rich enough, your parents are rich enough to send you to a university and be able to pay it off. But these days, universities and colleges don't have the same credentials that they used to. These days they're used as brainwashing techniques, and this has been proven. And for anyone who's seen Yuri Bezmenov talk about this, he was talking about the subversion of Western world, of our democracy, of our way of life by Soviet forces. So when he was talking about this, he was talking about how the communists were going to come in and work their way up into position of powers or authority and slowly change the culture over the course of several generations, probably about 2 or 3 generations. And one of the key places they targeted were the universities, because this is where kids came to get educated for their time after college to get into the real working world. But during that time, for that 4 years or so that they're there, they could poison them against everything that their nation stood for. So this was in America, this is in Europe, this is in Canada. And we are starting to see the outcome of it. So these are meant to be brainwash techniques into left-wing ideologies, which is also right now one of the reasons that so many people who vote for liberals are college educated or university educated, is because these institutions have been subverted. And it's been a very successful technique. We're starting to see what's going on right now. Another reason why this doesn't really end up applying is because back in the day when you were going, like decades ago, going to college or university, you were going there and getting yourself a degree that actually mattered, something that could get you a job once you're done. Nowadays, people are going for useless friggin' degrees. I mean, the amount that go in for gender studies and all of these bogus friggin' degrees is unbelievable. And this is, again, where I separate education from intelligence, because apparently these people have the money to go in and get $80,000 in student loan debt for a useless degree that's not going to help them in the real world. Tell me, how if you get a master degree in feminism, how is that going to help you out when it actually comes to getting out into the real world and making that money? So they went in for a useless degree, took on a lot of debt, and have nothing to show for it. So there's, again, I show the disconnect when it comes to college, when it comes to education and intelligence. But meanwhile, everyone else that didn't end up going out have actually gotten a head start on these people because they're going into jobs. They get 4 years more experience there. They're actually going to be the ones that could possibly gain the experience and work their way up in the business, in an industry that they want. Maybe they took an apprenticeship or something that'll actually matter and make them money. So the disconnect between education and intelligence. The thing is, too, is now we're having quotas for universities and colleges. So now it really doesn't matter on merit. It's about bringing people in that should not be in universities or colleges simply because you have to make a gender quota or a racial quota. And we're already seeing how quotas don't friggin' work. There was just something the other day that said that that companies that go on a gender parity quota actually make about 12% less money. Now, one of the reasons for that is because board of directors that are made up of a bunch of women, they're less likely to take the risky choice. And statistically, men make the riskier choice, the riskier investments, which can either lift you up or sink you, one of the two. So the gender quotas don't really work. But now these universities are bringing people in, and it's getting to the point, I know that at least when in Ontario now, when it comes to at least from grade 1 to grade 6, you can't fail. You just get moved on to the next grade. So nobody learns, nobody fails. So it is an education for the lowest common denominator. And this is exactly what is happening in universities right now. And it's going to come up. I'm guaranteeing you, in the next few years, we're going to start hearing about how people cannot be failed in universities. And it may even be starting right now. Plus, we've heard enough stories over the course of the last several years when it comes to the situation on campuses. It's just meant to indoctrinate people into their ideology. It is nothing about educating them. It's about the subversion of our culture. I mean, how many of these university professors have been involved with a violent group like Antifa that are literally calling for communist revolution on our countries, in America, in Canada, that try and tear down our history? Many of them are the exact type of people that they rail against. They call themselves anti-fascist when they're the ones that are trying to use violence and intimidation to get their message through. They call the society racist when they actually have very low expectations for anybody that's non-white, despite the fact they try and present themselves that way. I think a good example is not someone who's from Antifa, but a good example of this mindset is it Chelsea Osborne? Ozzy Osbourne's daughter. She was one time on The View, and when she was talking about Donald Trump, railing against him about his immigration plan, she said, well, Donald Trump, if you leave all the immigrants out, who's going to clean your toilet? It's exactly the type of thing, is that immigrants are just dumb enough and they can do the lowest quality work. They're there to clean your toilets, that's it, sort of thing. So the thing is that I don't think a lot of conservatives are actually disagreeing with this. There are probably some out there that are, but they're not really disagreeing with this. What they're disagreeing is that it means something, that it means what it used to mean back in the past. It's not nearly as close to being as significant going to college these days. In fact, many people are starting to recommend that kids in my generation, the generation younger than us, Generation Zs, they're telling them, don't bother going to university. Don't bother going to college. Become an entrepreneur. That's where you'll make your money. But you're going to go to college, you're going to waste your time, and then you're going to come out with this huge debt, and then you're going to get nowhere in life. You're just going to be stuck with this useless degree that you might as well throw on the fire. And now you're going to have a huge debt, nothing to show for it. You're going to be working that minimum wage job anyway. So start up a company, learn trades, learn as much as you can that applies to the real world that's going to make you money and a good life. This is the sort of thing that they're recommending. But the thing is, too, is I think it's worth pointing out is that this guy who put this out, Amir Ataran, he says after he posts these 3 different polls where he's talking about this, he ends up saying, to correct much false information, I am not a liberal. I don't belong to a political party, and I am not an elite, but the child of poor immigrants and fantastic parents who helped me get an education. If you feel offended by the data I tweeted, well, so be it. So first of all, he says he's not like an elite or anything like that. When he's a professor for law and medicine, I believe he may possibly be a lawyer too. And I've been hearing enough coming out of University of Ottawa. In fact, I know someone personally, I'm not going to name any names, but this is a story that was told to me personally. I know them personally. This is a person who used to go to the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, and those areas around there to build homes and build schools for poor, disenfranchised people in the area. So this is what this person did. When in one of their classes, when they were explaining what was happening, when they were explaining what they've done, that they've gone out and done this, their professor told them that they had a white savior complex. This professor, who's done nothing to help these people, calls somebody who's actually gone out, putting their time, effort, sweat, and blood into helping poor people in the Caribbean to build schools, to build homes for them, that they have a white savior complex. So these are the type of people that are teaching children these days. And I don't believe that he may say he's not a liberal, he doesn't belong to a political party, but it's quite clear, if you ask me, where this is coming from. He's coming from the left-wing ideology. You're a university professor. It's almost guaranteed that that's where you're coming from. And maybe he's not a liberal, but he's probably a lefty if he's not. So he's trying to distance himself from this when in fact this is exactly the type of person that he is. Next part is just going to be a huge ironic twist, if you ask me. But Laurie Goldstein of the Toronto Sun replied to him saying, you got to stop this. You're not helping yourself out. You've put in 3 tweets already. And then Amira Taran says, 1 second. Intelligent people notice evidence and data. Unintelligent people like Laurie Goldstein notice being ratioed. It's dangerous to think the truth is a popularity contest. This is very ironic coming from a left-wing person. I'm going based on what I've seen, what type of tweets he's put out, and something that he said where I'm going to show you right after this. But it's kind of ironic when a left-wing person is talking about how truth is not a popularity contest. I mean, these are the people that talk about gender quotas and then turn around and said that gender is a socially constructed concept. There's no such thing as gender. There's countless doublethink that goes on in the left-wing ideology, in the lefty ideology. So I just thought that was a little ironic. And he makes some reference about how they attract the lowest common denominator because of things like, well, buck a beer, that's like, prove me wrong. But then at the same time, he doesn't really point out that just recently the Ford government was actually putting in financial literacy as a course in school that actually had to prepare you for the real world. And one thing you had to do, one of your projects is going to be how you're going to finance your first year out of high school. That's a great friggin' idea. That's an idea that has not been put out by a liberal. It was put out by a conservative government. Every single government will have good things and bad things that they end up putting out. But he wants to make it seem like anybody who votes conservative is stupid and anybody who votes liberal is quite highly educated. So that's just my response to this guy, Amir Ataran, who, again, he's not exactly wrong factually talking, but what he tries to imply out of that is significantly wrong. It's manipulative, and he deserves the criticism he gets. And no, it's not just because he's a brown person criticizing the conservative. And he keeps using the term less educated. He's making it quite a clear point. He's talking stupid. In fact, he calls it the party of the uneducated. So is that the Canadian version of the deplorables? We're the party of the uneducated? We're the deplorables now? Because that's what in the States, what the Republicans and Trump supporters call themselves, the deplorables, because that's the way that they have been described by their left-wing counterparts. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is Just My Stupid Opinion.